She slid an envelope across the marble table, calm, as a surgeon eyes cold enough to frost the water glass. "Take this money and disappear," she said, like my love had a price tag with tax included. "If it were you, what would you have done? Count the bills and walk away, or push it back and risk ruining everything?" I didn't touch it. My hands stayed locked in my lap, because I knew if I moved even a little, something reckless might come out of me. The cafe was one of those places built to make silence feel expensive. Chandelier glow, velvet seats, the soft clink of spoons over conversations that never mention rent. Her perfume cut the air. Her voice cut deeper. "Boys from villages don't marry my daughter," she said like it was posted on a highway sign. I almost laughed. "I'm not from a village. I'm Ethan Johnson." But I wasn't ready to say that yet. So I'll start at the beginning. I grew up where driveways are longer than stories, where the pool mirrored the sky and the windows were so clean, birds forgot they were windows. My dad, James Johnson, built an empire out of hours nobody saw, and risks everybody judged after the fact. My mom, Mary, turned giving into an event. Breakfasts with donors, galas where even the napkins looked wealthy, a smile that could sell the sun. In that house there were cars, staff schedules, a calendar that ran like an engine. There just weren't many questions about who I was without the last name attached. People liked my orbit more than my gravity. Parties felt like auditions I didn't know I was hosting. Dates lasted as long as it took someone to say your father's company twice in one sentence, smile included. You know what I mean? That little tug at your ribs that says you're not being seen, you're being used. I got tired of that feeling living in my chest, like a tenant who never pays. So one night after a dinner with a girl my parents wanted me to meet. Diamonds, like headlights, a laugh that stalled and started in the same place. Something in me snapped. I told my parents in the dining room where decisions go to be framed. "I need to leave," I said, and my voice wobbled because telling the truth is like stepping onto thin ice. "I need to know if anyone could ever love me without loving the Johnson name." My mom's fork stopped midair. "Ethan." "The world is not kind," she said, as if kindness was a service we could subscribe to. My dad studied me like a spreadsheet with a heartbeat, then nodded once. "If you have to do this, do it," he said. "Better to test a bridge than drive over it blind." I promised to be careful. It felt like a lie. Nothing about this was going to be careful. I left with a small suitcase and a bus ticket to a place where my last name wouldn't echo. Makalani. It smelled like rain on hot pavement, like fried dough and truck exhaust and ordinary life. I rented a room the size of our pantry. The fan ticked. The bed springs complained. I could finally breathe. I walked the streets until I found Mama Kay's kitchen. Handwritten menu, chipped mugs, the kind of food that hugs you from the inside. "You hiring?" I asked. She looked me over, not mean, just practical, and handed me an apron. "It's tough work," she said. "Lots of standing, lots of people." Good, I thought. I've been floating for years. The work was a rhythm I didn't know my body needed. Coffee at dawn for men with dirt under their nails, lunch for nurses with tired eyes, Friday dinners for families who ordered the same thing with the same jokes. I learned names, tables, the stubborn swing of the kitchen door. I came home smelling like fryer oil and soap, fell asleep before I could think of anything I missed. People didn't treat me like an heir. They treated me like a waiter named Ethan, which is all I wanted to be for a while. That's when I met Tanya. She had this soft, sideways smile and a laugh that didn't sound rehearsed. We talked by the back door, where the steam turned the alley into a cloud, shared cheap dinners on the nights we both had tips to spare. She liked that I worked hard. I liked that she didn't flinch at the word broke. The first time she asked for a small loan, it felt normal, like a favor. The second time, a test. The third time, a pattern I didn't want to recognize. One afternoon, I stepped behind the building and heard her voice tucked into the corner, low, confident on the phone. "He's softer than I thought," she said, a smile in her tone. "He's a Johnson." "Yes, that Johnson. I followed him here." My stomach fell through my shoes. You ever hear a truth so loud, it silences everything else? Yeah, that happened. I didn't explode. I just waited until she hung up. "So that's what this was," I said. She reached for me, guilt already standing between us. I hung up my apron that night and walked out into the dark. I took another bus, smaller roads, fewer lights, quiet that wasn't lonely. A village where strangers get remembered fast. I told the shopkeeper I'd stocked shelves before, not a total lie. And he handed me an apron. "Mr. Paul." Hands like sandpaper, heart like a toolbox. Everything you need and nothing you don't. That's where I met Jude, my coworker, early 20s, with bright eyes and a climb in his voice. "I'm gonna marry rich," he said while we faced the cereal aisle. "I won't die in this place." I didn't judge him. We all have an exit plan. Mine just didn't include money anymore. Julia showed up like clockwork. Everyone knew her. Biggest house on the lane, bracelets that turned sunlight into confetti, a confidence that filled space like fragrance. She was kind to me, which is how most things like this begin. Compliments like small hooks. Questions that sound like care. I stayed polite, distant. I could feel Jude watch each conversation from the corner of his eye. She'd been his dream long before I arrived, and dreams don't share attention well. Then the ball flew. Kids were kicking a beat-up soccer ball near the market, laughter throwing itself down the street, and one wild shot sent the ball straight at a woman stepping off the curb. I ran without thinking, caught her wrist, pulled her into my chest. The ball slammed the wall. We didn't move. Her breath caught. My heart did too. "You okay?" I asked, my voice softer than it usually is. She looked up, those eyes. Kind, steady, with a little humor like a secret. "I think so," she said, smile spreading slow. "I'm Anna." We kept crossing paths because fate can be obvious when it wants to be. She said she did accounting for the construction site outside town. Clipboards and spreadsheets where men in hard hats laid wire like veins under the ground. We walked by the river after work, sat on the low wall where the concrete remembers every evening's heat. I told her about the way the diner smelled 5 minutes before dawn, about the sound of the fan in my little room, about leaving behind a life that made noise but not meaning. She told me about vendors who came late and budgets that didn't, about laughing with the crew when a bucket of bolts turned into a confetti shower. Around her, my shoulders understood they could stop guarding. I didn't talk about my family. I talked about coffee and rain and how simple can feel like a prayer if you let it. Good things make jealous things wake up. Julia invited me over one evening to help carry something. Her house was beautiful in that way. Big houses feel in small places, like a ship that ended up in a pond. She set food down, stepped closer, reached up to fix a collar that didn't need fixing. "You don't have to be lonely," she said, voice soft, eyes persuasive. I stepped back without breaking anything. "You're a good woman," I said, "but I won't blur lines we'll both regret." Her face changed seasons. "It's her, isn't it?" she whispered, and she didn't say poor, but the word hung in the air anyway. I left before hurt turned into something cruel. Jude cornered me at closing a few nights later. "Julia likes you," he said, knuckles white on the counter. "She's rich. She has a house, why choose someone who can't give you anything? I could hear the ache beneath the argument. Because happiness isn't a ledger, I said. He laughed the hard kind. Says the man who never counted. He wasn't wrong, not fully, and that stung more than I expected. Maybe I said. But I'd rather build than be bought. If it were you, would you pick comfort with conditions or a chance at real with no guarantees? Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. One morning the crew was packing up. Trucks idled. Men rolled cables like lariats. I asked where Anna was, and a worker jerked his chin toward the site office. Miss Adams is finishing the paperwork, he said. I blinked. Who? He grinned, happy to be the one holding the secret. Diana Adams. She runs the company. The name hit me like a door I hadn't seen. She came out, then saw my face, stopped. Ethan, she said, her voice careful. I need to tell you something. We stood behind the office where the generator's low hum made a tent of sound. My name is Diana, she said, hands nervously braiding air. Diana Adams. I'm the owner. I came here to breathe without a last name. I should have told you sooner. I was afraid I'd lose the way you look at me. My chest loosened. So you were hiding too, I said, and it wasn't an accusation. It was relief. She nodded, eyes glossy. I get it, I said, and meant it. We were two people with the same scar in different places. We went back to the city together. I don't know what I thought would happen. Maybe I thought love could act like ID at the door. It doesn't. It just gives you the courage to knock. Her parents lived in a house where the art doesn't hang so much as float, where the glass is so clear it seems imaginary. Mr. and Mrs. Adams looked at me like I was a problem that shouldn't take long to solve. Where exactly is Ethan from? Her mother asked, voice trimmed sharp. The village, her father said, with a flick of his hand, and somewhere in the sentence orphan slipped out like an insult that learned how to walk. I felt the old world clamp down, the one where worth gets weighed in the wrong units. Before I could speak, Diana stepped up. I love him, she said, chin high. That's my beginning and end. I loved her more for that one sentence than for any building her name could sit on. The next morning, her mother called and asked to meet. No told me to meet. That cafe. The marble. The envelope. Diana has responsibilities, she said, each word pressed. She needs someone who can match her. You cannot. Then she slid the envelope fat with the sound of solved problems. Take this and go find a girl from your circle. My circle. Dirt roads and quiet shames she'd never step in. Here's the thing. I never wanted to use my name like a weapon. Leaving home was me refusing that power. But truth isn't always a weapon. Sometimes it's a key. I pushed the envelope back 1 inch, just enough to make a sound. You can't buy an exit from a story you don't own, I said. She stood so quickly the napkin fell from her lap. Last chance, she hissed. Take it. I didn't move. She left perfume trailing like a threat disguised as flowers. Outside, city heat bounced off glass, the street shimmering with all the versions of life I could have picked. I called my mother. She answered on the third ring, voice already wrapped in worry. Mom, I said, and my own voice cracked in a place I hadn't heard since I was a kid. I told her about Anna, who was Diana, about the village and the envelope and the part of me that was tired of hiding. She breathed out slowly, the kind of sound that has patience in it. If you love her, tell her who you are, she said. Be loved for all of you, not a piece. My father took the phone. "Proud of you," he said just that. It landed like a blessing. Diana invited me to a charity auction the next week, one of those nights where everyone speaks dollar as a first language. I wore a suit that felt like skin I'd forgotten I owned. Photographers looked past me until they didn't. The host took the stage, thanked donors called families by name. Then she smiled wider. "We are honored to welcome Ethan Johnson, son of James and Mary Johnson," she said, voice carrying gold. Heads turned. The whisper moved like a wave. I saw Mr. Adams's jaw loosen. Mrs. Adams's eyes widened like a door finally opening. Diana pressed her palm to her chest, steadying what I hoped was a happy heart. I walked across that room feeling lighter than money has ever felt. We slipped out to a terrace rimmed in city light. "I should have told you sooner," I said. "I didn't want to turn you into a test you didn't sign up for." She laughed once, breathy and stunned. "I fell in love with the man who pulled me out of the street," she said, eyes wet. "If his last name is Johnson, I'll deal with that." We stood there, the two of us, finally not pretending, and let the night be the witness. Inside, her parents found mine. Apologies poured out, dressed in careful words. My mother made it easy. My father made it kind. I didn't want revenge. I wanted us. That's all. Months later, we had a small wedding in a garden where the sky didn't need permission to be beautiful. Vows without microphones. Rings that fit. A kiss that felt like a door closing on noise and opening on home. That could be the end, and for some people it is. But the part that keeps me up sometimes, the envelope memory that won't fade, is this: if I hadn't revealed myself at that auction, if I had stayed the boy from the village in her parents' heads, would our love have been worth less, or just easier to insult? Do we really believe love crosses class? Or do we only cheer for it when the pedigrees match at the altar? Do you think that's fair? I still think about Tanya, who called my search for honesty a fantasy and followed me like a shadow with a wallet. I think about Julia, who wanted to be chosen for what she could offer and learned the hard way that offering isn't the same as being. I think about Jude, who wanted out so badly he mistook wealth for freedom. These aren't villains to me. They're warning signs. They're weather reports from a storm I had to walk through. If I hadn't left, I never would have learned how good tired feels after a real day's work. Never would have known the sound of my name when it doesn't buy anything. Never would have caught a woman on a dusty street and felt the world hush because two hearts recognized each other faster than introductions could. All of that just to sit across from a mother with perfect posture and slide an envelope back the way it came. Maybe that's what love buys you, the courage to be loud when silence is on sale. So yeah, I'm Ethan Johnson. I fell in love as a nobody found out she was somebody, and then told the world I was somebody too, so we could go back to being two people who pick each other on an ordinary Tuesday. If someone slid an envelope at you to make you walk away from the person you love, what would you do? Take the practical route and tell yourself love comes later, or push it back and bet on something honest. Tell me in the comments. Argue with me. Tell me where you're watching from. More important, tell me if you think love should carry a price tag, or if price tags are just another way we keep people in the places that make us comfortable. Stick around for the next story, because the night after that auction, a contract hit my desk that could have changed everything, and the clause I refused to sign says more about power than any speech ever could. If this hit a nerve, share it with someone who thinks money fixes the parts of us that ache, and drop your take below. Agree, disagree, or tell me your own envelope story. I'm reading, I'm listening, and I'll be honest.